I didn't realize how quick 15 seconds was. That.
Good for you, Nick, and good for anyone in your life who didn't know that either. Nick is the love and the thunder. Hello and welcome to May the Review Be With You with Nick and Joe. I'm Joe.
I'm Nick.
And today we are talking about the fourth installment of the Thor franchise. We're talking about Thor, Love, and Thunder today. A movie I know that as far as the MCU goes, MCU, I know Nick has been super excited about. As far as between the two of this year, I believe it's two this year, Doctor Strange and Thor, between the two, which were you more excited to see?
Oh, that's so tough. I think you're forgetting Spider-Man came out this year too? Was it
No, Spooderman was in December.
Okay. I think I was more excited for Multiverse of Madness because of it being right after Spider-Man. Although after seeing Thor a second time, I don't know which one I liked better. They were both really good in their own way. But yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a toss-up for me too. But I mean, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I was super jazzed for this movie. I think most people would probably rate Thor after Ragnarok. They'd probably rate him as like a top 3, top 5 favorite character in the franchise.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, we're here to talk about Love and Thunder today. And getting into it, before we get started in talking about our review of the movie and how much we either love or hated it, love and hate Love and Thunder. We're going to put Nick to the test here, and we're going to put 15 seconds on the clock to see if he can summarize the movie the best way that he can, and we'll give him a grade and see how he does. All right, 15 seconds on the clock. Are you ready?
Yes.
Begin.
Thor: Love and Thunder. Thor is no longer fat. We see the Guardians for a second. Thor kicks some butt, and then oh my gosh, we meet Gore, and time is the eternity something. And,
no! Stop. End of time. I love that started with Thor is no longer fat, because like, you know what? I mean, yeah, it's a huge plot point, but like, it's not what I would have thought of in trying to summarize this.
No, I didn't realize how quick 15 seconds was. That.
Good for you, Nick, and good for anyone in your life who didn't know that either. Nick is the love and the thunder.
All right, well, that's terrible. I can't wait for you to do one of these next time.
So, all right, in evaluating how you did on that, I'm going to be honest, I missed the first 8 seconds because I was laughing too much about you describing the first part of this movie of him not being fat anymore. But you did get Gore's
first 8 seconds.
You did get Gore's name in there. So and then there was panic at the end of that review.
I mentioned eternity as well.
That's true. You did get eternity in there. So I'm going to go ahead and give that I'll be a little generous with you for the first time in doing that. I'll give you a B- on that one.
Minus Joe.
Yeah.
All I said was Thor not fat, Gore, and eternity.
Well, you deserve a C-, but for the first time, you get points on that one.
All right. Well, we're gonna actually break it down for real this time.
Yes. Agreed.
In a longer format that people can understand.
So I guess just like coming right into it. I mean, just overall, how'd you feel about the film?
I really liked it. So we're at a point now with all these that they have to introduce like a lot of new characters to kind of keep like the excitement going, I think, in some ways. And then obviously like there's a whole new storylines that have to be introduced. And so like, it's kind of the same thing with Multiverse of Madness and this. Like the first time I watched it, I enjoyed them, but so much happened that I couldn't really like grasp everything. And so watching everything a second time was like super helpful. So like, after finally, watching it a second time, like I really loved it. Like, it had a nice like branch of like new character introduction and new like plot lines plus comedy and things like that we all like kind of love with Thor. So like overall, I like really enjoyed it. And I think there's some really exciting stuff.
I think so too. I think, I watched it twice. The first time I saw the film, it was probably my second favorite as far as like the Thor franchise goes. And I got turned off a little by like the humor in the movie, just because like I felt like I was getting hit by like a lot of jokes really quickly. And at times I was like, I don't know if this feels like appropriate to like the mood or like the overall like theme of the story. But upon watching it a second time, that thought completely disappeared. And like, I don't know, I guess I enjoyed it like a lot more the second time. And I think I saw like the love theme a lot more throughout like the entire film. I'm not sure if this is, it's definitely not a top 5 for me. It's probably a top 10. Because yeah, like I said, that second time I just really got a kick out of what they were doing. I really loved Jane Foster in this movie, especially everything going on with cancer, and we'll get into that. But I don't know. I guess like to just kind of kick things off, let's start with the very first scene of this movie, which is our introduction to Gore, Christian Bale as Gore.
Yeah.
What'd you think of his performance?
He was incredible. I think without him, the movie would not have been as good, because he just did such a good job. Like he was like, and such like a different take on like a bad guy than what we're kind of used to, I think, right? Like, my goodness, like, and he's just like a phenomenal actor too. And so he really just like stole the show, I think. Really, really good. He just did an amazing job. Like, I loved it.
Yeah, I honestly can't say enough about his performance in this movie. Because you're right, it really was such a different performance from what we received in villains so far, especially like in Thor villains. Like, this was easily the best Thor villain we've received.
For sure.
In someone that isn't just evil. like I mean, I guess like you could argue, I mean, Loki is technically the villain of the first movie, and he does have some dimension to him, but like, I don't know, I don't really see like his motivation in that movie being all that compelling, or even really his goal being really all that compelling. But man, Gore.
This was great. I mean, they set it up so well at the beginning too, with like, obviously his daughter dying, and then just all of a sudden he sees like his God, and like they really just like, they gave you a perfect picture of like despair and faith turning into hatred, and obviously him becoming the master of the necro sword, and decreeing that all gods must die, which is just like a crazy way to start off, right? Like, really cool.
I think this is also the first time that we started with a villain. I could be wrong about that. This is the first time we started with a villain, and we didn't start with a narration at the beginning of a Thor movie. We did get a narration, which this time, instead of it being either Thor or Odin,
right,
it was Korg,
which is great.
Yeah.
Like, bringing him in during Ragnarok, like, what a treat of a character that we get to like have. Like, he's just so entertaining. He's a nice like addition to the cast. I mean, like to the whole to everything. Brings like a brightness and just like a complete joking aspect, like, regardless, right? So, which I think is like appreciated.
Agreed. And there's a lot I want to say about Korg, but I really like focusing in on that first scene real quick. So when Gore is chosen by the Necro Sword, this was something I was really curious about, just as a comic fan. So Nick, I don't know if you know this. You probably have heard me actually say this before, so I'm sorry if you have, and I'm going to bore you and literally anyone else who ever hears this with this knowledge that they probably already know. But the Necro Sword has its origins in symbiotes, in like the Venom origin story. Being from the god of the symbiotes, and his war against the celestials of the universe in the early days, in the primordial days of the universe. So I was really curious to see like what they were going to do with the sword, since Sony owns Venom and pretty much anything having to do with the symbiotes. And what was interesting was like they described it more as like a shadow sword, or a weapon of shadows, but like it behaved like the symbiote, I mean, I guess you could make the argument that it behaved more like a parasite, because very early on in the film, after they meet Gore the first time, I believe it's Jane who says, so the sword has infected him, and I didn't realize like we actually see the infection happen when he cuts himself on it, which that was a neat little detail that I like. like even before he's getting choked out by his own god, the sword is already working its magic in Gore and is taking him as like its vessel.
Right.
Which I don't know. I would almost argue that the sword is almost more of the villain than Gore is, even though like Gore is, he's carrying on his crusade, but it's not until the sword is dead that he's able to even be convinced of a different argument or a different wish at the end of the movie, right?
Well, that's a very important point too, right? Because that's the only reason that the movie ends how it does is because they destroyed the sword.
Right.
If he still had the sword when he got to eternity, Thor would not exist anymore. So,
which I think works really well for the climax, but it almost makes me wish that they hadn't killed the sword, because that leaves so many questions about, if the god, in this case, the symbiote god being Null, if Null doesn't exist in this universe or doesn't exist in the way that he traditionally does, then who created the sword and why did they program the sword, for all intents and purposes, to kill gods, right? Like what's that backstory? Because clearly there's more to it than what we got in this movie. Oh, I am interested to see if there were any seeds that were like secretly like planted there that maybe like we're not picking up on anymore, because like, we as the audience believe that the Gore story is over.
Right. Well, yeah, and it honestly it probably is. However, bringing it back to the bigger plans for the phase 4, like we're multiversal, so I mean anything is possible, right? But I think for all intents and purposes, like Thor, it's a Thor movie. Gore was the bad guy for it, and he was semi-defeated himself, and that's kind of it. But the cool part about it is we get his daughter, who is the love part of this movie, right?
Right.
We'll find out later. And just like I'm excited for the new character introduction, because like the small glimpse that we got at the end was so badass that like I'm like, and it is such a cool different level for Thor's character to take on in future films, of him being an uncle basically and having a kid to take care of, and their on-screen chemistry was great, obviously, because it's his real daughter. It's his daughter in real life playing her. And I don't know if that'll be, what happens if we ever see her character again, but I thought it was really exciting that we got that as kind of a resolve.
No, I'm excited about that too, especially the way that she's been described and like what that could possibly like lead up to as a child of eternity. Right. Which by the way, we got to see eternity in this freaking movie, and like as far as
it wasn't weird.
It wasn't weird. It worked.
It freaking worked. Done.
Yeah.
And the scene when after he makes the wish and his daughter's coming back. And it's shaped like her, but she has the eternity outline.
Right.
Oh, dude, what a cool fucking scene.
It was so cool.
Such a cool scene.
So like I think the reason why, like as far as comics go, like the reason why I've always been drawn more to Marvel than I have to DC is because I personally I believe that Marvel has a more developed cosmic hierarchy in their comics that I've always found easier to understand, and I don't know, like it's just really cool. Like I love learning about the Marvel cosmos and like how they explain like how the multiverse was created or how the universe was created, and like all the different like lords and gods that loom over everything. So when we first got the name drop of the Living Tribunal in Doctor Strange 1, that was enough for me to geek out in that moment. Like, oh, maybe eventually they'll do the Living Tribunal, but we just got eternity. So yeah, we are going to get the Living Tribunal at some point. Some point that's going to happen. We saw a statue of him in the Temple of Eternity. There's a statue of him. I saw Mistress Death was also in there. Weirdly, I don't know if you noticed this. One of the statues was the Watcher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was an odd choice to put in there, but I guess he's on the same level as all of them, according to the MCU.
Yeah.
Which I forgot who plays him.
Celestial Head.
That's true. Yeah, we saw Celestial Head too.
Yep.
Right. In
Omnipotent City.
Yeah.
Which was awesome, but then also that scene is just wild. Like that was so cool.
I want to save Omnipotent City because yeah, there's so much to unpack
Yeah, we'll
in
get
that
there.
scene.
We'll get there.
But yeah, go back to the beginning. So we're past the scene with Gore. Just something I really want to like point out here. When the Marvel logo came up, whoever like is in charge of doing that, I don't know if you noticed, but the Marvel logo is updated like every time there's a new thing that's come out, like right before whatever the other thing is. Because in the, I think it's the R of the Marvel logo, you see Miss Marvel come up. But like, funny enough, she was seen in her like Miss Marvel costume, which she does not appear in until the finale of Miss Marvel, which had not appeared yet at the time that Thor had come out. So like small spoiler to like nobody, but yeah, that was kind of neat. Can we talk about Matt Damon?
Oh my God, please. Let's get
Can we talk about Luke Hemsworth?
Oh my God. And Sam Neill.
Sam Neill.
Listen, that little part in Ragnarok was such a big hit that they had to bring them back even more this time around. Like we got like a full scene. It was a full scene.
With Melissa McCartney too.
Dude, I couldn't believe it. I was just like, this is still going. They're doing the whole thing. It was so funny. So funny. And then on top of that, later, after the whole invasion, they doubled down and they give us like the actors out of costume, and it basically is in real life Matt Damon. And Luke Hemsworth is like, yo, we should definitely do this because like it'll be really good for the city. The town needs this right now.
The people need entertainment. Yeah. No,
it's like convincing them that they needed to do another like.
Which, by the way, can we talk about the fact that not only do they just exist in the MCU, right? But like, let's talk about for a second that these three characters survived Ragnarok.
Oh my God!
They survived the Thanos genocide in the beginning of Infinity War. They survived the blip, or maybe they didn't, or maybe they just came back. But they've survived like several disasters, despite the fact that it does not seem like these are warriors whatsoever. That is, and yet they keep living.
That is such a great point. I hadn't even thought of. Like, they're more resilient than half of the Avengers.
Literally half of the Avengers.
Literally half of the Avengers. They are more resilient.
Yeah, 100%.
Comical. Unbelievable.
Which, by the way, like I feel like an idiot because I didn't. So I knew about Matt Damon. I knew about Luke Hemsworth in Ragnarok. I didn't realize that in that movie that Odin was being played by Sam Neill.
Yeah.
And then of course in this movie it was also Sam Neill again. Right. But like somehow I had missed that the first time.
We missed that like the first 100 times we saw Ragnarok. And when I was rewatching it a couple weeks ago, I texted you. I was like, because I was watching this and I was watching this scene, and for the first time, I'm like looking at Odin, the person playing Odin, because you know it's always so funny to look at Matt Damon and Luke Hemsworth. But then for the first time, I just decided to like focus on Odin, and I was like, wait, this guy looks familiar. And I just to myself, I go, no freaking way, that's Sam Neill.
It's the dinosaur man.
And then I went on Google to like confirm it because I was just like, there's no way. There's no way they got Sam Neill to do this. And it was. And when I texted you, I couldn't even believe the words I was typing. Like, it was just like such a fun. And that's what I love about these movies. Like there's always something that you've missed. Like even years later, that was never for some reason spoiled for us that was Sam Neill. Like you would think that someone would have told us that was Sam Neill, or we would have seen something online. But it was such like a small, fun thing that it still can be discovered by you for the first time after seeing it like 10 times. Like, such a great like Easter egg in a way, you know?
I totally agree. After this movie, I ended up looking it up myself just because I was curious on just Sam Neill's participation in it. And I guess I didn't know this. He's also oh crap, I'm gonna mess this up. He's either Australian or New Zealand. I want to say I think it's Australian. He's an Australian actor. And apparently like he's known Taika for like a while. And the two are just buddies. So Taika like threw him into Ragnarok, and then you know to keep the gag going in this movie as well. And like in an interview with Sam Neill, they asked him like, you know, what does he think of the Thor movies? And he's like, I don't understand them. I I don't really get what's going on. Which makes me just love him all the more. I really want Sam Neill to be my uncle. He's seems like a really great guy.
That's
but anywho.
But while we're on that topic, real quick, I feel like we'll just keep it in the New Asgard for a second.
Might as well.
Just for a second, because I don't know if we want to talk about the Thor introduction for the movie, but real quick, I loved seeing like New Asgard as like a tourist trap. It was so funny, and also I want to go there. Like, please,
right?
I would love to take a cruise to New Asgard. Like, that looks so great. It was just like, and I hope that like Disney just takes note and somehow, incorporates it into a park somewhere. That would be so cool.
Oh, someone's having that conversation in an office behind closed doors.
It was so funny. Like,
anyway. I'm glad you brought this up, because like there was one part of that I found really questionable. Which, don't get me wrong, the Infinity Cones gag is very funny on first sight. I did like it, but I was like thinking about it, and I was like, maybe this is me like too battered by like how like sensitized like everything is in media these days. But like my first reaction was like, wouldn't people be really offended by like the Infinity Cones thing, considering that wiped out half of all life? like, wouldn't people be really triggered by that?
Yeah, but Joe, it also brought back the other half of
but it created like so many problems. I mean, we saw in what was it, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like, we're dealing with like a lot of problems with like the people who returned. I just saying, it feels like a sensitive subject that the Asgardians are not catering to.
Well, they come from gods, basically. So
yeah, I guess the problems of the people do not matter to gods. Which you know what? That only goes more to Gore's point.
Yeah.
So you talked about Thor's introduction, and I actually do really want to talk about that real quick. Because we get the introduction from Korg, and we kind of get a quick montage to the point that you brought up of Thor being fat and then not fat. Right, very important. So I liked all the entire introduction. I thought that was a lot of fun. You and I made a prediction before this movie had come out, and we were talking about the Guardians of the Galaxy and what role they might serve in this movie. And you and I predicted that they'd probably be removed early on in the film, but might come back later for the climax.
Right.
Well, we were half right.
Right.
Which I want to ask you, like, how do you feel about that? As far as at the end of Endgame, we get this departure with the Guardians and Thor, and I think of all the stories that got tied off at the end of that movie. That was probably the story thread that I was most interested in, to see like where that could possibly go.
Right.
Because it feels like there's so much possibility to it. So how did you feel about what they did there?
I didn't mind it. Like, that might have been like one of my least favorite like sequences probably of the film. Like, because in some cases it was like, why are they even here? Right? They probably could have explained it in another way, like what happened in between, instead of like giving us them for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like, one of the things I think fans were excited about was like, oh, cool, we're gonna get like a Thor Guardians adventure, right? And then that
another classic Thor adventure.
Yeah, it's clearly not the case. But the other side of that is we get an insight into what the next Guardians adventures might be, because there are just tons of things all over the map that need help. People need help, right? They're just getting alerts left and right. And some of it was from gods, but some of it is just from the world being put back together and like things just going wrong, right? So that, in that sense, it's cool, because we kind of get a little insight onto like, okay, what the Guardians of the Galaxy are just going to start like knocking off like things that need to be fixed, while also potentially looking for Gamora. But we don't get that cool Thor Guardians thing, which like we got a taste of it in Endgame, and that they seem to have like really good chemistry on screen. So it might have been like a cool, like, let's give us a full movie of these guys doing something. But then I guess if you think about it, like a god's problems are way bigger than like the more mortal guardians, right? So like, I guess the question would then be like, what kind of conflict are they going to like come up against that Thor can't handle himself?
Right.
Right. Like that kind of a thing. If you want to dig deep on it, but I don't know, overall it was cool to see them, but like but it was probably only necessary because of where Endgame left, right? Like they could have explained it probably a different way, in my opinion.
So a couple points for me on this.
Also, Star-Lord looked exhausted.
was it me, or did Chris Pratt look a lot skinnier, like a lot thinner?
Really thin, and like he looked tired. Like, and I don't know if that was like what they were going for. They were trying to like give us the vibe that like they've been fighting throughout the galaxy for like a year or 2 years together or something, or months or whatever, or like part of him as a human being is also just really tired in life right now, like, or something, like, I don't know, it was so weird. He looked really tired. It was really funny.
I agreed. He really did. So a couple of points I want to make on just the Guardians in general. I think overall I was kind of disappointed. Similarly to you, I was disappointed with how they were introduced and how they were kind of kicked aside. I think I get it for the most part. I mean, this movie already had a lot of characters, and we were introducing Gore. We had to do an explanation on where the hell Jane has been this whole time, and now Jane has powers. We're going to Omnipotent City. We're meeting new Asgardians. Like there was a lot that the movie had to like juggle, right? So I kind of get the decision to get rid of them. It makes things easier from a writing point. I could definitely see that. It feels like a missed opportunity because I mean, I feel like ever since Guardians 1 came out, it feels like the MCU has been trying to borrow a lot of what made that movie work, right, and trying to sprinkle it into all of its movies now. I mean, like the best example is Ragnarok, right. That movie in particular really went hard in on like the Guardians formula. So to have them merge together, it felt like a natural thing to happen. But if we're looking at the themes of this movie, right, we're talking about the theme of the movie is love, and how Gore is motivated not only by the love for his daughter who is gone, but also he appeared to have love for his gods who abandoned him. Right. So this scorned follower decides that all gods must die. Well, Guardians, if you recall, Quill is a god. He's half god, as we learn in Guardians 2.
He's half god, but not anymore after Guardians 2.
Well, yeah, so like he loses his divinity, but like I feel like that's the kind of thing that like is going to come back, Yeah,
I agree. I don't think he's like fully not a god.
Right. That feels like it's too important of a plot point to never come up again.
Still half god, but I see where you're going. That's a good point.
That, and like of course Gamora being like his lady love, but it's not his Gamora. Like it just feels like both of those things were almost like deliberately written this way to be part of this movie. And they're just not, they're just kicked aside. And I mean, as far as the Guardians go, I feel like what little like we actually got of them, it felt off. Like their chemistry felt off. Yeah,
it definitely felt off. I 100% agree with you. Like it just, that's why I was saying like they could have done without it. It just felt a little forced.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I think the only Guardians moment that I actually like on both watches that I truly enjoyed was Korg trying to do the goat whistle, and he asks Mantis to do it, and like we get this weird sound out of Mantis's mouth. It's like all the Guardians have one line in the movie each, except for Chris Pratt, of course, but like just one to like make them present in the movie, and like her one line was just a guttural sound that she made. Fucking love it, classic Mantis.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely forced. Like they could have. I mean, they were already using Korg to narrate. Like they could have used him to narrate like the reason that he wasn't with the Guardians anymore. Like, while he was doing a training montage, like wouldn't have been difficult. Yeah.
It feels like it was almost like if you were going to do it, like that would have been the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we quickly maneuvered over to after Thor has discovered that gods are dying.
Yeah.
We quickly adjust and we go to a room where Jane is receiving chemo.
Right.
And yeah, we quickly get reintroduced to Natalie Portman. So go ahead.
And so and next to her is a kid who's also receiving chemo, who's reading her book.
Right.
She has written. And I think I know why you're excited to talk about this, because it was a really funny part. She notices that he's reading her book, and she says, basically acknowledges that she's the one who wrote it, and he's very excited. And they acknowledge that the part about wormholes is very difficult to understand. And she asks him if he's seen 2 movies, one of which is Interstellar. And she goes, "Have you seen the movie Interstellar?" She's like, "That movie explains wormholes really well."
So I love so much that, like, because I guess, thinking back on it, Thor 1 did come out before that movie had come out, and like they try to explain like the Rosen Bridge, the Einstein Rosen Bridge, and then of course years later, Interstellar comes out. Then we get this movie. She references Interstellar, which I guess Christopher Nolan is canon in the MCU.
Yeah.
And she
awesome.
Yeah, it's so cool. She references
I don't
that.
think what you haven't realized is that our lives are canon in the MCU.
which hang on, actually, yeah, that raises a lot of questions, because if Christopher Nolan is canon in the MCU, that means that The Dark Knight is canon in the MCU, which means like Batman exists in the MCU by way of fiction.
We're gonna have to do a whole nother video about Batman being canon in the MCU. Because Batman is also Gore. What is going on?
You honestly just kind of blew my mind with that.
Oh, we have to stop the stream. We have to stop the stream.
We've cracked the code. But no, what I was going to say, like, as far as that reference goes, with her referencing Interstellar, I love that when she's explaining the wormhole, it's the same exact explanation that they use in Interstellar by folding the page and then poking it right through.
Right.
Love that.
So
yeah.
Right. So we come to the realization that Jane not only has cancer, she has stage 4 cancer. She has very bad cancer. And we got a nice little cameo from Darby, which is cool. Well, yeah, and then Jane goes to her lab where we get to see Selvig real quick, and they're trying to see, is there any way to stop it and reverse it? And then she gets this like sense that she needs to open up the book to read about the Nordic history from Thor, and we get an obvious transition basically.
Which, okay, so kind of jumping around here because I want to keep it focused on Jane, to when we actually get our introduction to her as the mighty Thor, which, by the way, she looks great. You and I have discussed this many times about Natalie Portman's current physique, and I'm a big fan.
Yep,
big fan. She looks great. But yeah, I thought their introduction together felt almost like a rom-com at first, which I'm sure that like that was intentional. Yes. That theme.
Well, it felt like a rom-com because like they created a love triangle immediately with his old hammer. So it's just like we get like a love triangle, but it also is like a love square because of Stormbreaker, and it's just like that was probably one of my favorite things to watch, especially the second time, because I appreciated the jokes more watching it a second time. Like
the hammer gag with the love square is probably my favorite part of that whole movie, especially with the with Stormbreaker both times literally cutting into the scene blade first.
So good.
Yeah, absolutely loved it. Love that Stormbreaker is a character now, not just a weapon.
Right. It's so, like gave the weapons like personality. So good. Then we get this cool montage of like a Thor and Jane's like history together when they were dating.
Yes,
which was like really cool. And I like kind of much needed, right? Because like regardless of whatever the reasons were, like it was kind of like an abrupt, like Jane is no longer like a part of Thor's storyline, like after that second movie. And it kind of like, we didn't really get much of an explanation. Like they tried to give us one in Endgame when like Fat Thor was like, talking about, like emotionally, like lost the woman of my dreams, blah, blah, blah. But like, we never really got any like information, and she's kind of just gone.
So okay, so everything pretty much about Jane, I freaking love in this movie. And you're right. I really love that we got a quick montage about what had happened between Thor 2 and Avengers Age of Ultron. Because that's the first time that we find out that they're not together, right?
Right.
So not only was that necessary, I thought it was done really well. I also felt like it gave us like a really good explanation as to like why there's such a difference between Thor in Thor 2 and in Thor Ragnarok. This relationship, I mean, like his time on Earth really seems like to have changed him in like a lot of ways, but this montage almost served like to retroactively explain why Thor was goofier between like those two movies.
Yeah.
He really like, the hot dog costume, like pretty much like all like the goofy dumb like couple stuff that you do when you're in a relationship, that's what like he was doing. And like
Right.
it had formed this kind of new Thor that we got to know, which from like a technical standpoint, obviously that's not what happened. We got a new director and that's what happened. But
Right.
but as like an in canon explanation, it worked nicely retroactively. I love pretty much everything about it, about the explanation. The one thing I want to talk about though, in regard to her lifting the hammer. So this is an interesting point because I like how Mjolnir, or Mjolnir as certain characters might pronounce that name. I like that she's able to lift the hammer because of a blessing that Thor put on her out of love. So
Right.
it works really well with the theme of this movie.
Right.
I think for me as somebody who like was familiar with like the origin story of Jane, or at least Mighty Thor, I think I was a little bummed that, and I'm not saying what they did was bad. In fact, the opposite. I think it worked really well for the context of this film. I was a little bummed that it wasn't because she was worthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Jane in the comics, she's able to lift the hammer because Jane is worthy,
Right.
which like it feels like pretty much everyone in freaking comics is worthy and has like lifted the hammer at least once in their tenure of being in Marvel. It almost means nothing anymore. But obviously when it happens, it's a big deal. So from that point, it kind of felt a little robbed. Obviously it's not. It works really well for this movie. And I think Jane certainly, the way she's written, I think she certainly comes across as worthy.
Right.
Sorry, I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
No, I mean, and I think in some cases, like Thor placing that blessing is a way for him, like, to acknowledge that she is worthy, right? In some cases, so like
that's a good argument.
Nice way to like think about it in some cases. So, but no, I see what you're saying.
Also, just in regards to Mjolnir, before Jane picks up the hammer, we come to find out that Mjolnir has become an attraction in New Asgard, where it is in this glass dome for everyone to come see. But hilariously, it is still on the patch of grass that Hela shattered it on, meaning that nobody could lift it because it's still enchanted. So they actually proved the elevator argument from Age of Ultron correct by cutting around the lawn and lifting the lawn to take the hammer away.
Hey, Joe, this is why you're the guy, and I'm just the other dude talking everything through, because that is such an amazing point. And now I got to go watch it a third time just so I can properly appreciate that scene. That is so hilarious and so true. That's so great. I'm just picturing them not being able to lift it, and then also proving the elevator scene simultaneously. Oh, so great.
Yeah, and you're like when it's a great like visual meta gag. Honestly, it's a
Oh,
great
that's so good.
callback.
I love that. That's amazing. Great job.
Thank you.
Oh,
I'm here all
that's a
night.
great call out. Oh man,
But
so exciting for me in that moment, just realizing that.
you're welcome.
You're welcome. Okay, but so while we're on the subject of that,
Mhm.
how awesome is it that it's able to like break itself apart and put itself back together? What a cool addition, right? Like
Freaking
we think that
awesome.
we think it's destroyed, and it also raises questions like Thor never went, like Thor himself didn't realize that that was possible, right? Because in Endgame, they take it. He takes it from traveling back in time to help
Right.
fight Thanos instead of just like going to where it was destroyed
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
picking it up.
100%.
So like not only is it like an awesome reveal of this new like power that the weapon has, but like it's an awesome reveal that like Thor didn't even know it was possible.
Well, like it couldn't have been done before, right? Because it hadn't been shattered at that point, and
Right.
which at the time, like he thought that was impossible.
Right.
Um, and so like two things on that. One, it's like you said, it's just really freaking cool. It's just such an awesome upgrade. But two, it was also not a pointless upgrade either, because it actually served a purpose for the climax of the movie and is the reason
Right.
why
Yeah.
they're successful. Which I'm so glad that actually was like intelligently like thought through.
Yeah.
Um,
Very awesome way to destroy the Necrosword, by
oh,
the way.
super
Very
cool.
cool.
Yeah, because
So
like it wasn't like they just punched it and like that was it. They
yeah.
punched it and then they exploded it.
Yeah.
Super cool. But like on a point of the hammer, because like I do love when you can get some like really cool like writing like meta details in something. So like the hammer is broken, right? But it's fixed once Jane gets a hold of it. But Jane's also broken, right? Because she has cancer. But she
Yeah.
is fixed when she holds the hammer. So it's almost like they make each other better. They're like two incomplete pieces that are like filling the void for each other. It's just like another symbol of love, you know?
Joe
Um,
is just like hammering the freaking symbolism in this movie right now. You were just absolutely all about it. My goodness.
yeah,
Unreal.
like I said, I didn't appreciate it until the second time. I was like, this is brilliant.
Oh my God. All right, let's talk about the kids.
Oh, oh my God. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot
So
we can
let's
say
talk
about
about the scene.
this.
So obviously we're at the scene where like Thor finds out that Jane's mighty Thor. Awesome fight scene,
Mm-hmm.
township scene, everyone's fighting. Um, Valkyrie is like kicking butt, and she's one of my favorite characters, like hands down. But you know, then Thor sees Gore for the first time, and that's like a really cool like initial battle. But the main part of the scene is that the kids get taken at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
Gore kidnaps the kids and takes them to the Shadow Realm, which just makes me think of Yu-Gi-Oh every
Right.
time.
I know. Second
It's
episode
I
in a row
just
where this
scream
gets
duel,
referenced.
like it's time to duel. Like could we not use a different name?
Right. Right. I was just waiting for someone to say, like, I banish you to the Shadow Realm.
Right. But like, and the coolest part, like, oh, so anyway, so they take the kids, and then obviously the next scene is like them cleaning up the town, and then like, what are we going to do next? And I don't know if there's anything like super important we have to talk about there. If there is, let me know.
No, I would just say it doesn't happen in the scene, but we do see him. We get to see Heimdall's son, which
Ah, yes. Sorry.
this felt like a
Yeah.
detail that was definitely like added retroactively. Like, oh, by the way, he has a son. But I didn't care. Like honestly, like I
Right.
was just really glad the character was remembered, and like in this way, the character lives on.
Yeah, and I love that because that kid ended up like crushing his role. Like
Oh
he was
yeah,
awesome, and that's what's exciting about the new phases, and still keeping obviously like Thor's still around, and it's cool that they're able to introduce new characters to us because like the only way that the MCU is going to like continue to crush it is if we keep getting new characters that they can build on. And so like in this movie, we got two young characters that can now be built on, and like Heimdall's son is one of them, and obviously Love ends up being another one at the end of the movie. And so like just such a cool moment and like the kid was awesome. Like the actor was awesome. And so that was a cool dynamic that they were able to play on throughout the film, was like, you know, him talking to Hamdall's son, who wanted to be called Axel, which is such a funny thing for them to put in there. And so like he's talking to Axel, and then he ends up being the one to teach him how to see, which is kind of cool.
That was a neat like callback. I loved that
little callback. So, but that was one of my favorite parts of the movie too, is just like their interactions, and then obviously the very end of the film when all the kids are given the power to fight was one of my favorite like parts. Like that was just fun. Like if you hated that scene at the end where Thor gives them like does the chant and gives them all the power of Thor for a moment, for a limited time only.
For a limited time only.
For a limited time only. Like that was so cool. That was just a fun scene. Who cares if like them kicking the Shadow's asses doesn't make sense? Like that was just such a fun scene.
Yeah.
Like, it was awesome. And anyone who hated that scene or is like going to try to play off of like that's not realistic, they can go kick rocks.
Yeah,
and
we're talking
another movie ever.
Right.
Again.
We're talking about magic space gods in space trying to get to the center of the universe to make a wish to end the existence of all God. Yeah, come on, grow up.
And and then my favorite part too was like the girl who the one kid who doesn't go pick up a weapon is the girl who has her doll, and she doesn't go pick up a weapon, and then the doll becomes the weapon, and it's just shooting lasers. Like, just such a cool. It was just so great.
Oh, I totally agree with you. That whole scene is so fun. It just as far as like it making sense, like I don't know, like they're fighting creatures, right? And they appear to be mindless, so like kids are so chaotic and impossible to control. So like honestly, this makes sense to me. On that subject, actually, in talking about gore, I want to come back to him right now, if we can, because we were just talking about the kids, and probably. So if we're going to talk about our favorite like gags in the the whole movie, we both agree it's the hammer love square, which is great. My favorite scene in the whole movie has got to be when they are in the cage and Axel is trying to fill the kids with like encouragement that Thor is going to come and he's going to kill Gore, and Gore appears right behind him, and we just get to see Christian Bale be so freaking scary.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That might have been like the scariest like portrayal of a villain in the entire MCU.
Yeah, especially because he's like frightening kids.
Yes.
Like real time. Like,
God, the way his eyes just fade into the screen like the Cheshire Cat. So creepy.
He was so good.
Yes. Just every like it was the first time I saw the movie, I was a little disappointed because I was like, I loved Christian Bale's performance in that movie so much that I feel like we didn't get enough of him.
Right.
Watching it a second time, I didn't have the same opinion, just because like honestly, like the movie does so much that I was like, we established Gore's motivation really early on in the film. There wasn't really a whole need to do more development until the end. So I mean, like it's fine. It just speaks to how well Christian Bale really crushed that role.
Right.
So freaking awesome. I don't know. That's all I have to say on Christian Bale. We can certainly touch on his last words toward the end of this, but do you have anything to say on that?
No, I think that's good for now. I think we need to go, and this might be the last place we have to really go before we wrap and talk about the end.
Are you talking about Omnipotent City?
Yeah, I think we should go there and get that discussed.
Shall we talk about this year's orgy?
Oh my God, dude. I couldn't believe the second time I watched the movie, I was like more like, I laughed more during those scenes. But the first time I watched it, I was like, man, I was not expecting Russell Crowe and Zeus to be so creepy. I was so shocked the first time I watched it that I was almost like upset that they made Zeus this creep. Like I was just like, what is happening? It was also like, obviously it was like super hilarious.
I mean, it's pretty on brand for like the Greek mythos of him.
And it was cool that we get like this whole, like, there literally is a God for everything.
Yeah.
Like that was kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, we got the bow god.
Yeah, with just like everything. But my favorite part, and it wasn't even the fact that like we think that he kills Zeus. That was badass. Like that was super badass that he catches the thunderbolt and then throws it right back through his heart. Like amazing. It was just like, this is what thunder looks like, like whatever, like so cool. But my favorite part about that scene was that like gods bleed gold. Like,
Yeah. So yeah, let's talk about that for a second. I'm so glad you brought this up.
The symbolism, not symbolism, but like just like the use of the colors and like, because like if there was, they couldn't have done that if it was red, right? So they were like, you know what? Gods bleed gold, and this is going to be a bloody scene, but it's not going to look like it. Like it was, and then you get Valkyrie just like standing there, just like hit me with all the blood, like it's just like filled me with gold. Like this is so cool.
This was such a great directive decision to make the scene like incredibly bloody, but to make it gold, because like you said, like right. If they could not have had a PG-13 rating if they decided to go the traditional route in maintaining this scene. So to compromise, yeah, we get this amazing amazing idea of making gods bleed gold, which I don't know if we've seen Thor bleed before. I feel like we must have.
We have, and I'm pretty sure, and it was not. I'm pretty sure we've seen him bleed. It wasn't gold.
We must have.
We might have seen him bleed, but we've seen him get stabbed and whatnot.
Oh yeah, that's true. We've definitely seen him get stabbed.
You know what I mean? So I don't know if we've ever seen blood. I mean, he lost an eye, but there was no blood.
I mean, like
it's tough.
There was like dried blood, right? Like it was like black.
Yeah. I mean, that's something they could always go retroactively and
just put some gold around it.
Like touch it up. Star Wars-esque, you know, like add later, you know. But no, that was so cool. I love that. Like
that was a great point. Yeah.
And a great point on like the power that colors can play in a movie, right? Or even in just a scene. Because like as you mentioned, like if that's red, if blood is red, the movie's R-rated. Right? Like, but you just change the color of something and it completely changes the thought process on the scene, and it completely changes the rating of a movie. Like and the cool part there too is like it was almost like a hint to like them like doing something even cooler with colors later when they got to the Shadow Realm. Which like when I was watching that for the first time, I was like, oh, Joe's gonna love this scene. Like, cause like you love like, and I mean I'm with you too on the whole color, how colors can play. But like that scene was really cool. Like
you absolutely called that. We'll talk about it, but you're right. I geeked out hard.
Yeah. But while we're still in Omnipotent City, you know, like that was like a whole cool thing where, you know, he's trying to get their help. They're all shitty gods. They don't want to help, blah, blah, blah. Throws a bolt through Zeus. And then they have to leave. And they're either way, they're still going to the Shadow Realm because they have to save the kids.
I believe you are skipping a very important naked Chris Hemsworth scene.
No, I didn't want to talk about that.
so just in case this comes up, I just want everyone to know that earlier this year, Nick and his beloved were going through the MCU, and Nick was really excited because Cena, as they were going through the franchise, she really liked Chris Hemsworth because, you know, who doesn't? But then, of course, we got to the scene in Endgame in which Nick recorded her reaction upon finding out that Chris Hemsworth was fat, or I should say Thor was fat and kind of gross. And it was a great reaction. It was fantastic. She was just like the rest of us, very stricken with absolute surprise. So I can only imagine as to what her reaction must have been on seeing that glorious buttocks of Chris.
It was the same. It was the same as Valkyrie and Jane. Basically, same reaction as everyone. Same reaction I had too, by the way, for the record. But I'm glad you did bring that up because it was really funny. It was just like, you flicked too hard, damn it. And that's so good. But also like the back tattoo was hilarious.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah.
R.I.P. Loki. Like
so sad.
Like Thor went through such a depression that he got a back tattoo of his whole back of his brother. Like,
Thor is so sad.
so funny.
So I'm so glad you brought that up. I saw somebody had screenshot his back because like there's a lot going on back there. And in the RIP section, there's like a square that's like for those remembered, and it's Odin, his mom, and then the last two names, because obviously Loki's the big name like on the back, right? But in this square, it's dad, mom, Tony, and oh my god, and Natasha are also written there. And I don't know, I found that like obviously that scene is really kind of funny, but like the more you think about it, the more heartbreaking it is.
Yeah.
And how depressed this guy actually is.
And I know we're on the depression part of that, but I'm already thinking ahead to like the multiversal part of Marvel that's going to happen. Like, because we most likely get Tony Stark and another Natasha from another universe.
Good point.
And I'm just thinking about like Thor seeing those versions and being like, "Why are you doing here? I have your name tattooed on my back." Like, you know, like, it just sounds like such a funny scene that's probably going to happen at some point in the future that I'm like very already excited for this small interaction.
Place a Vegas bet on it.
Yeah, he's just meeting someone from like Natasha from a different timeline or a different Earth.
That's awesome. I want that to happen.
And it's just like, what? How are you? You're tattooed on my back. See? like I just feel like it would be fun. But no, I'm glad you said that because I didn't know that. I hadn't looked that up yet.
That was not my discovery. I saw someone pointed that out online. I thought that was pretty neat. It ultimately accomplishes like two things. One, that we get this pantheon of gods, including Zeus, which, you know, that sets up something later. And then we also walk away with the Thunderbolt, which I think is interesting for two different reasons that we'll address toward the end of all this.
I do want to bring up this too, because it's their transportation that I feel like is important.
Oh yeah, we haven't talked about that.
Yeah, like Stormbreaker's like throwing a fit earlier in the film because he can feel the jealousy. And so they need some kind of mechanism to help them transport themselves. So they grab one of the Viking ships, and Stormbreaker is like the head of that. But in front of the Viking ships is something we still haven't mentioned yet, which are the most annoying creatures on the planet. This fucking goats.
So I feel like we like subconsciously did not bring this up on purpose. So don't get me wrong. I actually do like, so I've seen online that people are really like, you either love them or you hate them.
God.
I am on team love, but I also did not need them in this movie.
Yeah,
and I think the gag overstayed its welcome.
The only scene that I was just like, okay, now they're hilarious, is when they crash into the Shadow Realm.
Right. That was easily the best use of them.
That was the best use of them. He was like, oh, we are here. But yeah, but so, you know, then they leave Omnipotent City on the Viking ship with the goats, and they get to the Shadow Realm, and we can talk about the cool scene in between when they're on the way there, and obviously Jane and Thor get like a big heart to heart, and
right, space dolphin scene.
That was a really nice scene where we got like all everything kind of resolved. Thor finds out she's dying. I don't know if there's anything you want to specifically talk about there.
Actually, there is something I want to specifically talk to you about. So this does come up between Thor and Jane, although I'm not sure if it happens during their travel to the Shadow Realm. It might happen while they're walking to Omnipotent City, but there's I think it is in the space boat. My bad. Where they're talking about Thor wants to feel shitty about Jane, which of course is advice that Chris Pratt gave him, which although terribly worded is actually really great advice.
Right.
And he's trying to explain that he wants to feel shitty about Jane again, and that, you know, he hasn't been doing so well actually. And he asks Jane if she's tried meditating. And I immediately thought of you on this because you are a big proponent of meditation. I know you're big on meditating, and Jane immediately responds with, "No, so boring."
Yeah,
I wanted to know, what was your reaction to that?
I laughed because it was hilarious, but then I actually had like a negative reaction, and and like I took this like to the extreme. Like I liked it because it was a joke and it was
Right,
funny. I
right.
laughed both times. I laughed, but my other side of that was like, this is why like people don't want to talk about mental health,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you have scenes like this in popular movies from characters that people love who are completely shitting on something that's
Right.
actually very helpful in the real world,
They
right?
stigmatize
So
it.
right, so like they totally like made it like a negative connotation, and I'm like, and this is the reason that no one wants to talk about mental health, like like. So I was like laughed at the joke, but then I took it the other way where I was just like, but it's also kind of a problem that they decided to kind of make it a joke, right? In a way.
Yeah,
Uh,
I actually really agree with you on this because like it was funny and Natalie Portman delivered it really well.
right.
In fact, actually, the way she delivered it, and I'm just thinking about this right now, a lot of the way she acts when she's acting really arrogant and acting strong because she doesn't want to like confront the fact that she's really scared about her
Right.
cancer. She is acting a lot like Thor in Thor 1,
Yeah.
and it's almost like the hammer is like brought out that side of her.
Yeah.
But you're right, ultimately I do think it does a disservice to all the good that meditation does. And it kind of stigmatizes all the benefits toward mental health that it
Right.
that it has.
Which
Yeah.
probably is not, obviously that's not what they were trying to
No,
do.
of course
Like,
not. They're just having a good time. Good
as
jab.
as the years progress, like mental health becomes more and more of a topic, and so like people start realizing like scenes like that, right? Like 5 years ago, that scene I wouldn't have had the same reaction, but like as I get more into like the importance of that, and as the world gets more into the importance of it, those scenes become a little bit more prevalent in your mind when they happen. So that was kind of cool. But anyway, but it was funny. I
No,
don't know.
I'm glad you addressed that. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, let's talk about just the first Shadow Realm scene,
Yeah, let's do that.
dude.
It
Like
was so cool.
the
Uh
second that like they get within range and the shadow like goes over them, I was like, oh, this scene's gonna be badass. Like because you just knew that there was gonna be some colors that came into it, right? Right.
mhm.
It's just like because like it's like, well, what doesn't have like what holds the color? And basically everything in that scene that had color was something that was like extra, like terrestrial is what I want to say. What's the word I'm looking for? That was like magical, basically,
Mhm.
right? Anything that was like given color was magical in that scene, basically,
Right.
right? Like Minior, whatever. I can't say the name. Uh,
Mjolnir?
Milner, yeah, like has the is glowing. She
Mm,
uses a flashlight, which is hilarious.
that was
Like
funny.
such a cool thing. And then the thunderbolt was glowing, which was really cool. And then obviously Stormbreaker, like you could see like the lightning and stuff. Um,
That
and
was
Gore's eyes as well, I believe.
Yeah, I thought that was so interesting that because I believe he does have yellow eyes in the comics, but they're not glowing like that. They're not like piercing.
Yeah,
It was obviously really deliberate detail to desaturate everything about Gore except for his eyes, and I thought this was such a great detail about him. That's the last thing that's lingering. Um, just in the description of the Shadow Realm too, by the way, because as you mentioned, I geek out when cinema plays with color. Um, I also love when you can say some really illustrative things about color. And Thor had one of my favorite lines of this movie, which was the Shadow Realm is a place where color dare not tread, which was like one of the most ominous and like spooky ways to like describe a place. So cool. Which of course that line opens itself up to Jane Foster being like her absolute nerdy self and trying to do like cool superhero catchphrases.
yeah, right,
Well, let's bring the rainbow.
right.
Eat my hammer.
Eat my hammer, which ends up being the fucking catchphrase she uses at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I love it. But
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. That scene, when they're just exploring everything is pretty cool, pretty inventive on how they're introducing color into the scene, which of course kind of foreshadows the kind of like literal lightning dynamic that we're going to see in the fight scene just minutes later. Um, but a couple points I want to like hit home here on that scene when Gore does show up, and gets everybody trapped, right? Again, we get to see Christian Bale just absolutely crush the scene, be super creepy. Um, and he ends up delivering a line that the first time I watched the movie, I didn't understand the significance of the line. Second time, caught it when he's trying to convince Thor to call the axe,
Yeah.
and he's explaining, he's doing his bad guy thing. He's explaining his motivation, as bad guys do, and he's telling him that like gods are only out for themselves. They don't care about the people, and that he doesn't care about Gore. He doesn't care about anybody, but he does care about like these two people. So if he wants to stop Gore, he's gonna have to try and save these two people. He'll have to choose love, choose love. And I totally missed that the first time because that's what Thor says to him in the end.
Right.
And that was such a great foreshadow. That was such a great reversal later. It was a great way to like stick with the theme of the movie. Yeah, I really loved that. Anything else that you wanted to mention on that?
It was just cool to see Jane realize what they needed and just
Oh
like
yeah.
badass like throw Stormbreaker out the window.
Why did you throw my axe?
Why did you throw my axe out the window? Like that was just cool. That was just funny. Like I enjoyed that. But yeah, that scene was fantastic. That's a great call on the choose love scenario there too.
Which we didn't actually address Thor's reaction to Jane having cancer. Which I guess this comes up later.
Yeah, I was gonna like talk about it next because like, this scene basically ends with, Thor.
Valkyrie getting stabbed.
Yeah, Valkyrie gets stabbed, which I was like, oh no, please. Like I was gonna be so upset if they killed her. Like, but it ends with her getting stabbed and then Thor, calling the Rosenbridge to get them out of there, and Gore coming up out of the ground and grabbing the Stormbreaker as they're being lifted out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the scene ends basically with Stormbreaker in Gore's hands, which is just like, oh no. And then the very next scene is them landing it back in New Asgard. And that's where I think we can kind of talk about like his reaction to her cancer, because this is where we find out that he doesn't want her to come with him.
I actually really loved how this gets discussed. How Jane talks about the fact that she wants to keep fighting because she doesn't want to be confined to this bed. She doesn't want to stop fighting, which is as we learned earlier in the film, something actually her mother said to her when she was dying of cancer, and this is something that apparently she's been terrified of her entire life. And I love that Thor basically says like I want you to have a life. We just got this back. Like I don't want to lose that.
Right.
And he sets up something that was really smart on the writer's behalf of giving Jane a choice in the matter. Which again, like this is something that Gore says, choose love. Because she ends up, as we'll find out, she ends up feeling I guess through the bond that she has with Mjolnir, she ends up feeling the blows that Thor is taking from Gore.
Right.
And she chooses Thor over her own life. But yeah, I thought Natalie Portman came off as really credible in this scene, as really scared, sad, not wanting to be pitied. I really enjoyed that. There is one thing about this though that I just want to bring up. I know why they did this. I don't feel like it would have added too much. So for the Mighty Thor comics, one of the things that I thought came off as like particularly powerful for like her whole story is, it's virtually the same. She has cancer, and with the hammer she has godlike powers, right? But when she doesn't have the hammer, she's going through chemo and she doesn't have hair, and she's got a bandana over her head, And like that was something I kept thinking about like every time like we saw her in chemo. It's like, well, she still has hair. And like I get like why they didn't like try to like cover it up or anything. Like, it's just easier to move forward, right? But I don't know. I guess from like a cancer, for anyone who's ever been like involved in like a cancer scare, everyone knows what that looks like. The skinny, uh, weakened person without hair, and then like how scary and sad that is. And like I just feel like that would have been a really powerful image to have seen. Like her, like she does look weakened and she does look really sickly.
Right.
But to go from like the transformation of like without hair, and like I just feel like that would have like added more to like how much Thor actually does love her. Like, even in that weakened, sickened state, like he still like loves her, I think
Yeah.
I personally would have liked to have seen that. I don't think it hurts the movie at all, it not being there.
No, yeah, I don't think there's an issue at all either, but I see your point.
Yeah. Just something as a fan that I think I would have preferred to have seen, but whatever. It's okay. I'm just a guy.
You're just a guy.
Just a guy. That we go, or actually no, we don't go back to the Shadow Realm. We go to Eternity, actually.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. We never do go back to the Shadow Realm. We go to Eternity, which is just like, I have so many questions about Eternity because like you're the comic guy, so like way more. But like, where are we gonna start? Okay,
good question.
So they get to like Gore gets to Eternity. He starts opening up the door, and then Thor shows up, and we've already kind of talked about the kids thing where he sees the kids and he gives them power, which is so fucking cool.
It's
so fun.
So cool.
Such a fun scene. We've already talked about all the statues we saw in this room, which is very important. And obviously the scene breaks out, they're fighting, and then Jane shows up. We already talked about how cool the sword being destroyed was. She uses her catchphrase, "Eat my hammer."
Eat my hammer.
Which was delivered way better than earlier in the film when she was telling us the idea she had.
Eat my hammer.
Eat my hammer. So that was actually fun, like seeing the culmination there. But the questions arise when Gore walks through the room after the sword's been destroyed, right? Like, and he's sitting there with Eternity. One of my questions is like, it's the first person who gets to Eternity gets to make a wish. But is it like the first person of all time, or just the first person who's like trying to get to Eternity in that moment in time? Because like, if Thor wakes up tomorrow and decides to go to Eternity and make a wish, can he make a wish? Or has Gore been the only person who ever gets to make a wish? How does Eternity work? Tell me.
So this is a great question, and as far as the story goes, like I'm actually not sure how many times like this has been used in Marvel Comics, but the lore is it's just the first person. So like in the MCU, like no one can ever do that again. It was just Gore.
That is so cool. That's how it's gonna go.
Yeah, like he kind of like cements his role like in the universe forever now.
Yeah, Gore's the only person to ever make a wish with Eternity. But also, like, they took a chance that no one had ever made a wish before.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't, like, just because you make a wish with Eternity doesn't mean that no one's done it before and that you would even know, right?
Oh, okay. Actually, I forgot. This is something I wanted to bring up in the Shadow Realm. I meant to look for this the second time while I was watching it. I think I saw it. I'm not sure. So you tell me if I'm wrong here. When Jane makes the connection about the key to Eternity is the Bifrost.
Yeah.
The image that she sees is it's the symbol of the Bifrost, which we've seen in every Thor movie. But it's coming out of the axe.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really weird because the axe was only recently made. So it's like the symbol of the Bifrost makes a lot of sense. Right. The axe does not make sense unless I'm remembering it wrong.
No, you're absolutely correct. Actually, that's a great point. And I guess to troubleshoot real quick, the answer is the Bifrost.
Right.
And Gore only started to look for how to summon the Bifrost when he became the holder of the Necro Sword. And he knew that Stormbreaker can summon the Bifrost. And so those drawings aren't from years ago. Those drawings are new.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't consider that. So you
So
think
for me,
it was Gore?
Those are Gore's drawings.
I had not considered that
Like,
possibility. I like that idea a lot.
For me, like those are just like that's Gore working through how he's gonna get to eternity.
That's like his like crazy like blueprint of like his plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's how he knows to go after Thor, and that's how he knows to go after Stormbreaker, and that's why Stormbreaker's drawn.
Okay. I actually fully support this. I think that makes a lot of sense. Did you just make that up at the top of your head?
Yeah, I just thought I troubleshooted real quick and I figured it out.
That was pretty good. That makes sense. Okay. All right. It's not a flaw. It's not a flaw.
Not a flaw.
Taika,
right.
You can keep your job. Nick just saved it.
But I love that that now he's like essentially the only person who can make a wish.
Right. And it also explains why Thor can't just run over, punch the heck out of Gore, and then make a wish to save Jane.
Right. Exactly, because Gore arrived first.
I got something. Not necessarily I need you to troubleshoot for me, but like a question. Because like, so Jane is dying in that scene.
Right.
And this is something that confused me just as a viewer, because like there's the moment right before she explodes the Necrosword where the Necrosword is slowly piecing itself back together, and there's this moment where Thor and Jane look at each other, and like there's this moment of knowing that like Jane's about to do something that's about to have like a consequence to it. Like that's at least like what I get from like their eye communication, right?
Right.
And then it happens, right? She explodes it, and then like she lays on the floor and she's dying. I don't understand why she's dying. Did you pick up on that?
Oh yeah, but so the hammer gives her the power of the mighty Thor,
right?
But it drains her human energy and capability to fight the cancer.
So is the explanation then like she drew so much power in that moment?
Yeah, she chose to pick up the hammer again to help Thor, and that last act was the last like bit of power she had left.
Okay.
And energy in her body basically draining, and she was no longer able to fight the cancer anymore. And that basically killed her. And that's the reason that she's able to go to Valhalla, is because that last bit of mighty Thor power completely drained her human energy and essentially was the reason she died in battle.
Okay.
But it just took a minute for her human body to like catch up to the destruction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, nice call there, actually, because you're right. Okay, I like that. Yeah.
She doesn't die immediately. She dies like a few minutes later after the wish has been granted.
Right.
In Thor's arms, but she still goes to Valhalla because she did die in battle. It just took her human body a second to like really like finish.
I mean, you might be able to make the argument that she actually died before they were in that like wishing realm, right? In the actual eternity, right? You can make that argument because it's hard to say like what was present in there. Like, was that the physical manifestation of their bodies? Was that just their minds? Like,
yeah, that's a good point.
What was there, right?
I really love the scene. Like, they really made the scene work because like there's plenty of cases where like the bad guy doesn't fulfill like what he wanted to do, and instead like is convinced by the hero like to change his tune. And there's plenty of instances where like it's like underwhelming and like
it's lame, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work. And like I was a little worried that was going to happen here. But I think they really did a good job of piecing all the things together.
There's a great setup for it, honestly.
It's such a great setup. And like obviously having this sword destroyed is a huge part of that, because it gives you the belief that like, okay, like he slowly becomes the father from the beginning of the film who just wants his daughter to live. Once the sword is gone, and once he's had a few minutes to like talk to Thor after the sword's not a part of him, right? So,
and God,
and Thor suggests it too, like you can bring her back, you can choose, you know, like whatever, right? Like you can choose love, like, and so like it really worked well. And then the symbolism of Gore opens the movie like begging a god for help, and then he dies begging a god for help that he was trying to kill,
Right. It began. God, you hit this on the head of why I love this so much.
It's such a good
It
scene.
begins with him begging for the life of his daughter and a god ignoring his help, and it
Right.
ends with a god listening to his prayer.
Yeah.
Oh, full circle, baby.
Full circle. Like, and those are great for you because you love movies that end like starting in like that too. Like such a full circle scene and really great. And then obviously like Jane goes to Valhalla, which is really cool. And now that we're talking about Valhalla, because like there was a mentions of it like throughout the film, and we haven't really talked about it yet. The scene where we get to see Lady Sif.
Oh my God, we haven't talked about Sif at all.
Right. Well, she was like kind of a small part, but it was cool to see her. I'm glad that she's back in the film.
She's back.
She's back, and there was like some really cool moments there. And when we first see her, she's like, "Let me die and go to Valhalla." And he's like, "Well, you have to die in battle. That's how it works." And it's like, maybe your arm is in Valhalla. It's like very funny. It was so funny. But the reason I'm bringing this scene up is because I forget the god's name that was dead in the background.
Oh, I do not remember either. Apparently, this is a comic character. I do not know this character.
The gigantic beast, right?
Right. Who apparently is the nicest god.
The nicest god, this gigantic beast. But the cool thing I didn't notice the first time that I noticed the second time is that like he is in the process of going to Valhalla in that scene. He's so big that it's taking so long for him to be absorbed.
I did not notice that.
So if you go rewatch the movie, you can see the gold coming off his body.
That's so cool.
The second time I saw it, I was like, oh, this is so badass. Like he's so massive that it's taking Valhalla like a while to absorb his body.
They're processing all his information.
Yeah.
we don't have the server speed for this.
Yeah, it was so cool it's such a cool scene. So when you watch it again, you have to remember to look out for that. Like you can see him like in the process.
I am shocked I missed that. That's super cool. I'm excited to see that again now.
But yeah, that's why I wanted to bring that back up, and then we get to talk about Sif for a second, which was cool that she's back, especially because she ends up being the one training Heimdall at the end of the movie too, which is really
not Heimdall, Axel.
Axel, sorry, yeah. Jesus.
Which, by the way,
he's so much like his father.
by the way, we brought up the fact that it was a really sweet scene between like Thor and Axel having like the eye moment together on him teaching him how to do it. Also, I wrote this down specifically in my notes. Thor throws Stormbreaker to Axel.
Oh, yeah.
Axel opens the Bifrost.
Dude, yes. Oh my God. I'm so glad you just remembered that. Like so much happened in this movie. Like that was another badass scene too. Like, so good.
So good.
Literally, like this is a classic example of a movie that you have got to see a second time because so much happens and they're introducing so many characters for the next phase that you just can't grasp it all in one watch.
No, it's a classic Thor adventure.
The second watch is just so perfect in so many ways. And now I'm convinced I have to see it a third time to really appreciate the film.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to do that too.
So good. So damn good. I'll probably wait till it comes out on Disney Plus though, because it's probably only like a month away.
Yeah, it comes out surprisingly fast, actually.
Well, I mean, it's because like they know that they're going to get all their viewers out like ASAP. Like, like we went to see it twice in the first week. Like, you know what I mean? Like everyone's watching this movie quickly. So do a quick theater release and then put that shit on Disney Plus and get those views pumping. Like, that's what they want.
So I guess the last thing that we haven't addressed here is that final scene. Or no, I'm sorry. Hang on. I'm rushing. So we get the narration, the outro delivered to us by Korg. Yeah. Who, as you mentioned, we get to see that training sequence with all the kids. Axel's getting special treatment from Sif, which is very interesting. As we start to see more and more, as you pointed out, more and more youth in the MCU, either a Young Avengers thing, or maybe this is just the future of the franchise as they develop and get older. Who knows? But Korg revealed earlier in the film that his people, the fact that he had two dads. And that you don't necessarily have to be two different genders to make a baby, in his species. And actually, I'm not sure if there are female. Oh my God, I'm forgetting what he is. But I don't know if there are. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure if there actually are. But anywho, Korg is gay. And Korg's in Korg's outro, we are introduced to his lover, who is Dwayne, and like
The Rock.
right, that has to be a reference to The Rock, right? It
100%.
has to be.
Not even a question, dude. Like, I laughed so hard in the theater both times. Like, I was just like, this is so freaking hilarious. Like, definitely a reference to The Rock. I mean, it's not even
100%.
Like, it's so funny.
I love that it's just him again with a mustache.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up. Such a good thought. And also that like his species the only part of them that's alive is their face.
Right. What a weird detail.
Like nothing else matters. Like you can be rebuilt as long as
did you think they killed him?
I did. I was so pissed.
I did too. I 100% believed it. And then when we heard the voice, I just assumed it was going to be like a Baby Groot thing, and I was like, "Oh no, don't do that!" And they didn't. It was way dumber.
Yeah, but funny dumb.
It was I loved it. I love stupid humor. Yeah. Yeah, he has a body again at the end of the film, and he's getting married. That's great. He found love. And then we get Thor and Love together, which. I didn't know this walking into the film. I'm sure you've heard this. Lots of people have been talking about this, that was actually Chris Hemsworth's daughter.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier on this recording.
Oh, you did? I'm so sorry. Yeah. See, you did know it. I'm glad you're taking notes.
I did. No, and the young Thor running at the very beginning of the film was his sons.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I think Natalie Portman's kids are.
Yeah, her kids and Christian Bale's kids are part of the Asgardian kids that are fighting.
Yeah. So like it was like a family affair. But
I think Taika's got kids in there too.
Probably.
Yeah.
But like him and his daughter have such a great chemistry.
Oh my god, yeah.
That was like one of my favorite scenes, and it was like the last scene of the movie. Yeah. Where they're just like they're interacting. He's cooking her pan flaps, and she's like, "I like pan flaps." Like blah blah blah. I'm just like, this is the Hemsworth household every day. This is amazing. Like,
I immediately thought of the video that you sent me regarding him going to the Tower of Terror with his daughter, and she's too small to ride the ride, but he gets her in there anyway by like sticking like candy bars in her shoes,
right?
And her like sliding out of the chair,
and it's actually her. Like, it's like
there she is.
But like, and she like, you know, for whatever the reason, though, like she was like a great actress in those moments. And their chemistry is just so good that it was just really fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and the coolest part about the whole thing was that like you think they're like at a house somewhere, and their kitchen is in a ship, and they're on a planet about to fight bad guys together. And they open the door to the ship, and it's like, wait a minute, this looks like a kitchen in like a house, but it's the kitchen on a ship. And they've just been kicking ass across the galaxy, and she's holding Stormbreaker, and he's holding
Mjolnir.
And it's just like, this is amazing.
Mjolnir, who has a face, by the way.
Yeah, who now has a face.
Because he was too boring looking.
Which apparently cannot be taken off.
Yeah, like I wonder if they're actually going to stick with that detail. I truly hope they do. But yeah, the final shot of that movie with the two of them jumping in the air together with their hammers, really awesome. And of course, a callback to the beginning of the movie where Thor is doing the same thing by himself in his lonely, depressed state.
Right.
Yeah, I truly adore what this movie set out to do. I don't think it was a perfect film, but man, I don't care. I had so much fun in this movie.
Yeah, it was overall so fun. Do you want to talk about extra credit scenes first, or do you want to do a rating?
Yeah, they're part of the movie. Let's do it.
It's just really quick. Like the first one is like we find out
Valhalla.
Zeus is no, that's the second one.
Oh, okay, my bad.
The first one is we find out that Zeus is actually not dead.
Yeah, it's just a flesh wound.
It's just a flesh wound. Somehow goes right through him. Disappointing, because it would have been cool to know that like Thor killed Zeus.
Yeah, he's a god. He too is a god butcher.
Right. More symbolism would have been cool. But the cool part here is that he's talking to someone, and then we realize at the end that he's talking to his son Hercules, and we realize we're about to get a Hercules reveal, and then of all people, it's Roy Kent.
Roy Kent. Brett Goldstein. My God.
Unbelievable. Like, and I will say this though, I love that we got to see him and that that's who they cast, but I am like super skeptical right now about like
him. Oh, if he can separate himself from Roy.
He can separate himself because like like I said, like there was that one smirk, and it almost looked like he was like too happy and giddy to be Hercules, and not pissed off that he was supposed to go kill Thor. Like he looked happy, and I think it was more like the actor came through as like being too excited to be playing Hercules that he couldn't be in character. Does that make sense?
I see what you're going for.
I got like,
I think for the, at least for me, like what I got out of it was the former of what you said, that like he's just like he's thrilled about like the challenge of getting to kill like Odin's son, you know?
okay. Well, I hope that's what it was, because I got the whole Goldstein is just too giddy to be playing Hercules. He can't be in character during this one scene. That's how
I gotta believe that Goldstein's like a good actor. Like
no, he is for
yeah.
sure. But I was just thinking of Roy Kent too much.
Like for sure. How can you not? Like literally, like we walked out of the film and I was with 3 other people, and like all of us were like, it's Roy Kent.
Yeah.
Yeah, how can you not?
He's there, he's everywhere.
He's everywhere. He's Roy Kent. So yeah, that is awesome. Hercules is in the MCU. He's Roy Kent. And I'm super excited to see where that's going. If that's going to be a Thor 5 problem, or if we're going to see that develop sooner.
Right.
Either way, it doesn't matter. It's just one of those classic like MCU moments where things are moving in the world of the MCU, right. And it is neat to see them the gears start turning. It's what makes the world feel so alive, right? Our second scene is it is revealed. I almost said Natalie Portman. Jane Foster is in Valhalla. She died a worthy warrior's death.
Yeah.
And she gets such a great greeting.
We're greeted by Heimdall, who we all
Heimdall
love. And we're just like, yes, this is so great. If there's like some little storyline we can get about Valhalla somehow.
So actually, I totally forgot to bring this up. So I think I know where they might be going with that. So Jane's not done being the mighty Thor. Like I think she's coming back into the MCU at some point. I don't know how, but she is. And the reason why I'm confident on that is so there obviously like a lot of like what we saw in those movies were 2 different like references to Jason Aaron is his name, the comic writer who wrote the Gore God Butcher storyline and the Mighty Thor storyline. Obviously those 2 stories being like the big inspiration for this movie. So after, I believe it's the story is called The War of the Nine Realms. We end up losing Jane Foster as Thor, and Thor reclaims his mantle. He is worthy. And Jane steps aside. She's technically dead, but she goes to Valhalla. And she ends up becoming a Valkyrie. And eventually, like, she ends up becoming the Mighty Thor again. I believe that's a more recent thing. But anywho, she rides a Pegasus as a Valkyrie. And we saw that happen in this movie.
I'm very glad you're bringing this up because I forgot to bring that up as well. Her entrance to the eternity chamber was her riding Pegasus.
Yeah. And Valkyrie's sisters were brought up at least twice in this movie, maybe 3 times. Yep. So like the horde of the Valkyries, like they're coming back, and they're coming back with Jane.
Right. But yeah, that's it. That's a full review recap.
Final scores.
So for TV shows, we do out of 5, but for movies, we like to do out of 10, just because it's such a longer thing. Man, this is tough to score because for all the reasons we mentioned over the last like 3 hours, this is a really long video. God, I want to so bad put it in the 8s, but I think I have to give it like a 7.75.
7.75 is pretty good, and it's pretty close to what I was going to give it. I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. Because like
I want so bad for it to be like an 8.
Right, because it's so fun.
Or an 8.5 because it is so fun. But like I can't ignore the fact that like on the first watch, there's so much happening that it's like impossible to really like appreciate it for the first time. So like,
well, like plus like the MCU is like so full at this point of movies that we're grading this against, right?
Right. That's also a great point.
Yeah. And films that I would regard as much better, despite maybe not having nearly as much fun with them. Like Infinity War is probably it actually beats out my what used to be my favorite, freaking Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Right.
But it's close though. um, but yeah, I don't think this movie beats out Ragnarok. I think Ragnarok has like a magic and a just a I don't know. There's something about Ragnarok that I think works better, like on a film level.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, Ragnarok is definitely better. And,
yeah,
and it's simpler.
that's the thing, right? It's
It's
simpler.
it's
Uh,
simpler, and like the trio of Valkyrie, Thor, and Banner is so perfect.
mhm.
Like those three like work so well together too. That was so fun.
On that note, I guess we'll wrap it up here. Unless anything else I'm skipping out on.
No, I think we've got most of it covered. There's probably some things we missed. Hit us in the comments, please, and let us know how we did and what you think what your score was. And yeah, we'll see you. We'll see
Heck
you next
yeah.
time.
We'll see you next time. And of course, may the review be with you.